If you're a pre-med, I would say my biggest piece of advice to you, even though this might be a little controversial, is to... Hello everyone, my name is Jordan. I am a fourth year medical student at UVA. I am a former teacher and I am a co-founder of NovaCards. So today we're going to be talking about something interesting, which is something that I think is a bit of almost like a cheat code for getting into medical school, for getting into residency, and almost for life too. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now, but I think we all want to feel like there's a way to make this whole process easier. And by far for me, this is the thing that has helped the most in that. Now, of course, there isn't really a cheat code in medical training. One of the big ways this is applicable is with your grades and your test scores. There's kind of no way of getting around the fact that medical training is very academically rigorous. You're going to need good grades. You're going to need to score well on your tests, whatever it might be in the country that you're in, to get into medical school. But there is something that you can do that will make the whole process feel like you're fighting a downhill battle instead of an uphill battle. Now, the reason I think it will feel like you're fighting a downhill battle, like everything else is easier after you do this thing that I'm going to talk about, has to do with what exactly we're training to do as medical students. So what we are trained to do isn't to be experts in anatomy. It's not to be biochemistry PhDs. It's not to do research, although all those things would be helpful. Really what it is we are trained to be employed as physicians, to be excellent at giving care and working as a physician. There's a lot of components that go into that, and some of those are being good at chemistry, are being able to get good grades, are being experts in things like physiology, but some of them have nothing to do with that. A lot of it comes down to what are you like to work with? Are you someone who makes it easier to get your other people's jobs done in the hospital? Are you someone who is responsible? You can be trusted to do things. Are you someone who shows up on time, does what they're supposed to do? And if so, that's going to give you a big advantage in the work that you do as a physician. So you might be wondering, what's this mysterious thing that helps in all these different aspects of medical training? And you can probably tell where I'm going with this. And that mysterious thing is work experience. There's lots of different types of work experience you can get. There's part-time, there's full-time, there's volunteer, there's research, there's all sorts of different experiences that are sort of like work. But there's particular kinds that I think are super helpful and will make the rest of the process just a lot easier. Like I said, so it seems like you're fighting a downhill battle. Part of the reason I wanted to talk about this topic is that I had a very unique experience when it came to this. So I'm a non-traditional medical student. I spent, I don't even know how many years cumulatively, 6 or so years between when I could have finished with my undergrad and when I actually started medical school. And I used to think that that was so much time off between finishing my undergrad degree and starting medical school that it would be super hard to get in, that I would be kind of stuck in my ways. I'd be used to getting a paycheck and not having to be in school, and that schools wouldn't even really be interested in me. And that was the exact opposite of what I found. All of my work turned out to be an advantage rather than a deterrent when it came to applying to medical school. And it's always seemed like a bit of an easy battle, I think because of that. And in particular, one thing that really surprised me about this process was that sort of like how, when you apply to medical school, they say, oh, the things you did in high school don't really matter anymore, don't really mention those in your application. I sort of thought that when I was in the process of applying to residency, that anything that I had done before medical school wouldn't really be an advantage or a disadvantage. It just kind of all gets wiped away and they would only focus on what I did in medical school. And that was the exact opposite. They were really, really interested. All the people I've talked to, all the interviewers and my advisor, everything, they were very, very interested in the things that I had done before medical school because it involved work experience. It involved training the parts of my personality that don't have to do with academics, that are going to greatly contribute to the way that I'll be able to work as a physician. So why might schools even care about this? I think it comes down to something which is interesting, it's sort of harder to find, and that is soft skills. Soft skills are crucial because they affect how you interact with everyone at your job, they affect how you perform as a doctor, they affect what you'll do as a medical student, but they're really kind of squishy, right? They're hard to measure. It's really easy to give someone a test and say, here is how well you've mastered the principles of biochemistry, or here's how well you understand anatomy. But it's not easy at all to give someone a test and say, oh, this means you're a good teammate, or oh, this means you'd be pleasant to work with. You have to be able to have an understanding of anatomy, chemistry, all those things, but the day-to-day life of the people around you when you are working in residency is probably a lot more affected by the soft skills, your interpersonal skills, all those things. So that's really what programs are looking for in a lot of ways. They want you to be able to pass a minimum standard. For some specialties, that standard is very high because they need some way to weed out people because so many people are applying. But once you meet that minimum standard, like a lot of the other things, a lot of the academic numbers stop to matter as much. And I think that's because at a certain point, they're really just looking for someone they want to be around for a lot of the time. And one way to demonstrate that you can be someone who's pleasant to work with is to actually get some work done before you apply to residency. Some of these soft skills that really come to mind, there's many that you gain by getting work experience, but I think some of the most important are as follows. Number one, in my mind, is leadership. I thought leadership was a really fuzzy concept when I started applying to schools. Like, what does that really mean? Like, does it mean you're in charge of other people? Like, that you were a manager of some kind? I think what it really boils down to is that you are someone who has the ability to get things done. So you can look at a problem and you can solve that problem. Whether you're solving it by yourself, whether you're solving it with people who work with you or even for you, you take the responsibility of seeing an issue and fixing it yourself. Now, it makes a lot of sense why you would want someone who has leadership to be on your team, because there's lots of issues that pop up in hospitals, that pop up in medical schools, and the people in charge don't want to have to take the responsibility of solving every single one of those issues. They want to be able to get people on board who are going to contribute to the community as a whole. And so demonstrating your ability to solve problems, to get out there and really make things work is crucial. And not only that, but if you demonstrate that you can do that, that's promising for your future. There's a ton of other medical issues, with healthcare systems, with research problems, with inequities that we really need a lot of leadership on. So that's the sort of people they want. And you can demonstrate that by demonstrating leadership in your work experience. Another big one that's crucial that I've had numerous program directors and other residency interviewers ask me about is teamwork. And when I say teamwork, what I really mean is the ability to contribute, to cover for other people, to be someone who's there to make the whole group function well together. Something that comes to mind that is really important in residency in particular is your ability to, let's say, cover for other people. So in anesthesia, which is what I'm applying to, maybe someone needs a day off and you have your day off, but their kid is sick and they have procedures they need someone to do the anesthetic for, but this resident is unable to perform those procedures. It would be really bad for that residency program if every single person was unable to cover for this person who had a sick kid. And I've actually had program directors tell me that they think that people who can't cover, who can't constructively participate in a team, are basically poison. This is the word they said for the residency program. So being able to just cover for other people to really help put the success of the department ahead of yourself is a really crucial step, and it's something that really is going to be important for every stage of your career. Like when you're an attending, no one's going to want to work with you if you're always putting yourself first, and you are sacrificing the success of the department and your patients by doing so. Another crucial one is dependability. This is obviously important for doctors in a lot of ways. Let's say that you are a radiologist and you find a lump in a otherwise benign chest x-ray. You don't know what this lump is. People are really counting on you to be dependable to follow up on that lump to make sure the patient gets it evaluated. Similarly, if you are derelict in your duties as a doctor, if you're not showing up on time, if you're not preparing for cases or for patients, it's going to be really, really hard to work with you, right? And those skills of being dependable are easily developed in basically any job. Just even showing up on time to a normal job, being able to get your duties done in a reliable way is crucial. And there's a lot of people who have never really had that sort of experience before of just having to be reliable every single day. So if you can demonstrate that you are like that on your application and through your experience, that's a really big leg up when it comes to applying to both medical school and residency. So hopefully I've convinced you at this point that it's worth it to get work experience. However, the type of work experience you get can be different depending on the different types of jobs you get. It can be different depending on what stage of training you're in. It can be different depending on what's available to you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think are important types of work experience and how to pursue them and some kind of decisions that you might have to make along the way. So first, we're going to start off with the two different phases of training that you're probably looking for work experience in. First is pre-med, the second is if you're in medical school. If you're a pre-med, I would say my biggest piece of advice to you, even though this might be a little controversial, is to take a gap year, or consider even taking multiple gap years. Now, the reason why this might be controversial is if, let's say, you have a really good application and you feel confident that you're going to get in your first try, it's possible that by taking a gap year, you are reducing your lifetime earnings. Physicians make pretty good salaries. You start making money later in life compared to other careers. So you're delaying when you can start making money, and then eventually you're delaying the amount of money you'll have when you retire. While that is an important consideration, I think it's also important to keep in mind that physicians very rarely want for money. Even the lowest paid physicians can afford a comfortable lifestyle if they're able to be responsible with their finances and they don't have too much debt and that sort of thing. So if you want to make the rest of the process easier and you're willing to sacrifice the long run income, I think taking a gap year is a great decision. There's a couple reasons why. It helps with the applications, as I've already mentioned. You develop skills that are going to be crucial as a physician. You can explore other parts of your personality that you probably won't get to explore in as much depth later on. You can do things like travel, and you can even take time to do extracurricular activities that are also interesting, that might be enjoyable and also might look good on an application. So if you're on the fence about taking a gap year, my advice is to just do it. Consider the delay. Medical schools, in my opinion, actually sort of prefer it. I don't have data that actually says that, but I thought I was going to be at a disadvantage, and it turned out to be an advantage for me. If you don't want to take a gap year, or you're unable to for one reason or another, there are ways you can get experience in college. There's probably all the things you would normally think of. Having a part-time job could work well. Having volunteer experience can work well. Doing long-term research can work well. But I've talked to people who are on admissions committees, and the best type of experience you can get is a normal 9-to-5 job, just like you're going to work for the rest of your life and just like everyone else in the world works. So taking some time to work a 9-to-5 job over the summer break can actually be a huge advantage for you. You can see what it's like to work a normal schedule. You can get some experience, have some opportunity to maybe have some conflicts with coworkers that you can resolve, or to be dependable, or to be a good team player. And I know, talking to my friends, that full-time work experience is really what stands out to admissions committees, more so than like a part-time 10-hour-a-week student job. That being said, if you have to take a student job or you have to do research or something else besides full-time work, having a longer commitment over multiple years and really, trying to dig in and make some difference at your work can be helpful. So let's say you're a medical student and you've never really had significant work experience in your past. While it's probably not ideal, because work experience can be really helpful, there are ways you can get experience in medical school that can at least inform your application and help you develop some of these skills. It's probably similar to what you might do in an undergraduate degree. It's going to be things like research. It's going to be things like maybe part-time tutoring employment. I know some medical students that do that, or volunteering. Again, it's probably best to go as deep as you can in each of these things. Like maybe research with one professor for a really long period of time. Consider volunteering at the same place and trying to take leadership roles and make positive change happen at those places. Or consider, maybe tutoring the same student a bunch and seeing how they progress. But having some experience doing those things is certainly going to be better than just kind of going through, studying, passing your tests. It's going to be really hard to demonstrate that you have the qualities that are going to make you someone who's pleasant to work with without some of those experiences under your belt. So now that you are willing to get some work experience, now that you're willing to take a job and maybe take a gap year, whatever it is, you might be asking, how do I take the most advantage of this time that I'm going to be spending? I'm going to name a couple of ways that you can do that. I'm going to start with ones that I think are the most important, but any of these can be aspects of a job that help you to grow the most and can look really good on an application. So one of the first ones that I've seen in some research about this as well, which is, by the way, quite limited. So if you're looking for a research topic, it would be interesting to research the effects of working on medical students and residents. Anyways, one of the things that I've seen pointed out is working with populations that you're going to be working with a lot as a physician. So in this paper, it was, I don't remember how they phrased it exactly, it was people who are sick, people who are disadvantaged, and people who are disabled, I believe. Those groups of people, it's very rewarding to work with people who are in those challenging situations. it can also be challenging itself as well. And I think if you take a job where you're serving those people, where you are demonstrating that you care for those type of people and that you enjoy that type of work, that looks really good, because that can be a challenging aspect of medicine. And if you're demonstrating that you already know what you're getting into and that you're already skilled enough to be able to do that, it's going to be an advantage. So consider looking for work that particularly works with people who are underserved in some way. The next piece of advice that is maybe my secret weapon too when it comes to applying to things is to do something interesting. I think it's really common for medical students and premeds to be interested in doing the things that all premeds are interested in. Like, everyone's interested in being an EMT, for instance, or maybe working as a medical scribe, because it's similar to your career. It's going to help prepare you, and it will give you really good experience. The problem with those things, not that there's any real problem with them, but the problem with it is that everyone else had the same idea, so it's not that unique of a type of work experience. If you're crafting a medical school class or a residency class and you want to make it as interesting and bring in as diverse of experiences as possible, it would be good for you to do that, but it's not as good as a lot of the other things you could possibly do. So, for instance, I've heard of people who have worked as professional flautists before, which is very interesting. Hardly anyone else in medicine has ever done something like that, I'm sure. I worked as a teacher through Teach for America in Idaho. There are other teachers in my class at UVA, but that's pretty uncommon, so that's a unique perspective that I can bring. I've heard of other people who have done consulting work, which it's kind of a random way to enter medicine, but I'm sure that brings a really unique perspective. So doing something that's interesting can help your application, but probably the biggest reason for you to do so is if you are actually interested in that work yourself. So while there's nothing wrong with being a scribe or being an EMT, if you are genuinely more interested in something else that's unique, that's probably a sign that you should maybe consider doing that, because it's going to look really good on an application as well. Even if it doesn't come with the advantage of working with disadvantaged people like being an EMT might, it can still look really good on an application. Another piece of advice I have for you to get the most out of your work is to just try to solve problems at work, whatever those problems might be. So remember we talked about how leadership really is just finding an issue and fixing it. That skill can be applied to literally any job in the world. Even if you're working at McDonald's, I'm sure there's things at McDonald's that are annoying to deal with. Maybe it's a training, maybe it's the way they've scheduled the shifts, I don't really know. If you come in with the attitude of I'm willing to find problems and solve them, it's going to give you good skills to bring into medicine, and it's going to give you a lot of stuff you can talk to interviewers about, and it's going to make your bosses love you because they don't want to have to solve all the problems. They want everyone to contribute to the success of the organization. So just have that attitude of looking for problems to solve them, and you're gonna bring everyone up with you if you do that. Another skill that I think is really important is getting along with people who are different from you. This is challenging in the political climate that we're in. We're very polarized as a society, but it's a skill that a lot of really sharp young people just are not good at. I think we've sort of, because of various forces in our society, have cloistered ourselves into groups of people who think like us. It can be challenging to have to work with someone who has very different opinions on things or who approaches their work in a different way. As a teacher, I saw this happen with some of my colleagues who worked at different schools, and they had a really hard time affecting positive change in their schools because they had a hard time working with people who had different opinions than them. You're really limiting your impact if you can't do that. And not only that, but it's basically inevitable that you are going to have to work in a medical context with someone that is challenging to work with or is different from you. So just being able to flex those skills, learn how to get along with people who are different than you, and to be able to demonstrate that on an application can look really, really good. Another big thing you can try to do to get the most out of work experience is just to help out your coworkers. This comes back to the same thing as the teamwork skill that I mentioned before. If you're able to cover people's shifts, if you're able to lift someone up when they're feeling down, if you're able to help someone with a skill maybe they're not as good at, all of that contributes to the success of the organization as a whole. And it can be something that looks great when it comes to applying to residency, because that's exactly the type of people that program directors want in their residency. They want someone who's going to lift everyone up with them rather than drag everyone down. My final piece of advice is if you don't find a job that really inspires you, or if the job that you're stuck with is just kind of okay and you have extra time and energy, is to start something yourself. I've obviously worked with Nova Cards. We've started Nova Cards, and I've done some other business ventures too. I did those because I'm interested in them, and I think some of the ideas I have can help other people. If you have the leadership ability, if you have the energy, if you have the organization, the dependability to be able to start your own company or your own nonprofit or your own club or whatever, and actually see it carried through and actually have success with it, that demonstrates a lot of soft skills that residencies are interested in. That demonstrates that you can solve problems, that demonstrates that you can work with other people potentially, that demonstrates that you have the drive to get things done. It's really hard to do that, and a lot of people can't do that. And if you can show that you can do that, it looks great, just based on my experience talking to interviewers. So even if it's something smaller, let's say you are really interested in making necklaces and you start a necklace making business and you sell necklaces, like that's just interesting, it's cool. And it shows that you have the skills and the drive to be able to contribute in a meaningful way to teams. So what do you guys think about work experience? Am I missing something about why work experience is important? Am I not understanding how difficult it is to get work experience today? You tell me, is there something else that you think is more important for applications, or a better cheat code, so to say, so that people can have an easier time applying to medical school and residency? I don't know. I want to know what you think. In conclusion, I think work experience is very important. I think I've had an easier time getting into medical school and getting into residency, assuming I get in, I don't know yet, because of my work experience. And I think this is something that's not talked about enough when it comes to medical students. So consider looking for work experience. Keep in mind all the great skills that you'll learn along the way, and keep in mind also that it will make you a better doctor because it helps you to focus on the challenging aspects of medicine rather than just being able to show up and be a dependable employee as well.